Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Today I have with me Coach Lain Lee, who is a mental performance coach and works with cheerleaders and cheer athletes and helping them to improve and get past those mental, we won't call them blocks. And welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got here today.
We got here today through the power of Instagram,
Yeah.
and I that remains my main way of making connections with people. It is a wonderful tool for that reason. A lot of people use it to reach out and connect. So, for as a networking tool, it's wonderful. But yes, hello everyone. My name is Coach Lain Lee. I'm a mental performance coach and tumbling technique specialist. I particularly specialize in foundational technique and helping high performing people and athletes outperform their greatest anxieties, doubts, and fears, and develop stronger confidence through understanding. I like to try my best to study ways in which we can logically deconstruct some of the biggest misconceptions about life and fear and things that we do, and make them more relatable and simpler. I think we hear all the time that humans are complex creatures, and it's actually quite the opposite. We're very simple creatures. So it's really fun to tap into that and give athletes, parents, and coaches an easier understanding of what it is that our athletes, student athletes, are going through.
I know uh, you didn't start at, well, you didn't start out doing mental performance coaching. I don't know if it was on the webinar or on another podcast that I had listened to that, you were doing more computer stuff and graphic design and kind of transition that. How did you make that transition and why into this specialty?
That's a great question. So yeah, I was doing graphic design leading up to starting Coach Lain LLC. And I've always been an illustrator growing up, so that was something I found out many years later that I just wanted to do for myself. It was nothing that I ever got into for other people. But before that, from high school through my college years and then beyond, I was coaching all-star competitive cheer and participating as an athlete. And so many parents, especially towards the end of that first leg of my coaching career, were telling me, like, thank you so much. Like, you just have a special way of connecting with the girls and explaining things, and you just have a really unique way of talking. And I never thought about it. Actually, I just did a interview the other day, and I was saying, my more recent um, philosophy that I've really adopted and like clung to is the idea of the ministry of presence, right? Which is, the showing up for people even when it's uncomfortable for them, for you. But I use that to help get my athletes in an uncomfortable place so that they can Tony Robbins calls it dominating the problem out, right? You can catch them off guard and get them out of their normal way of thinking. And but it's funny because going back to those earlier years, the parents were telling me these things, but they would also like pair it with like, you should be like a youth minister, or you should be, like a youth pastor or a teacher. And I was like, no way. And it's just funny how, almost 20 years later, I've adopted this idea of like ministry of presence. But yeah, so that's how it started. And the reason that I came back to it was that memory of remembering, like, I have a specialized knowledge and I have a different way of doing it. And if I were to do this professionally, I want to do it my way. I don't want to work for any gym or be tied down to any program. I want to be a free agent that is consulting and that gets to, I looked at it as an opportunity to travel, to meet new people. I love meeting people all the time. So it was just all those things wrapped up into one. And I got to still do some graphic design for myself,
Yeah.
on the back end. So yeah, and when it comes to the mental performance specifically, my sister is 11 years younger than me, and so when I stepped out of cheer, she went into it even harder. She was going level 5, um, competitive, world's athlete, but I was still the one chauffeuring her to her lessons and her practices for the most part at first, and so she was always telling me, like, Lainey, so and so has a mental block, or so and so is really struggling with fear right now. And it was just something about fear that just spoke to me, and like solving this human misconception of fear. and it became my magnificent obsession. Like I really wanted to understand it. And then around that same time, Will Smith's terrible movie After Earth was out, but he had this scene where he's talking to his son. He's injured in a spaceship, and his son has to go out and look for help and supplies. And he gives him this long monologue about how fear is not real, fear is a choice. And though I've since evolved my thinking about it, that was also a catalyst for me. That was something where I was like, huh, it got me thinking differently about fear, because he says, don't misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. And as I evolved off of that monologue, I came to the conclusion fear is not a choice. It's not a conscious decision. It's something, number one, that is subconscious. It's in our DNA. But number two, it's not the problem. It's our how we react to our fear. That's the problem. So yeah, so that, as you can tell, I really became obsessed with the psychology of performance. And then I realized there are other people doing it, but you can also make it your own thing and just focus on your own niche. So I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it.
One thing that really drew me into your Instagram account and like in your posts was your conversations regarding fear, regarding mental blocks and how it's
Mm.
a mental block. So because everybody asks, like, how do I get my kid over this mental block? Like, how is the mental block related to fear, or is it? And how does that translate into mental performance training? If that's the right question.
Are you ready for this? You ready for the rabbit hole?
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm not like a guru or anything, but the countless hours of research that I've done and postulating and putting this all together, connecting the dots, it really boils down to discomfort, right? This is where it starts. Discomfort is what human beings are. It's the antithesis of what being a human is, right? Comfort is where the brain likes to reside, because with new, things can seem dangerous, things can seem uncertain, and with new come a lot of uncertain feelings and chemical reactions in our bodies that lead to discomfort. And so fear is really triggered by that discomfort. We blame the small thing for the big thing. So we'll say, I'm afraid of snakes, or I'm afraid of, well, that's a bad example because snakes actually could cause you biological harm. But, we say, I'm afraid of the dark, or I'm afraid of the ocean. When, if you're afraid of the dark, are you really afraid of the dark, like the absence of light, or are you afraid of the discomfort that arises with not being able to see, and the fear of the unknown and things of that nature? So it's really interesting because it all stems from physical, emotional, or mental discomfort. um, it really helps us to also make sure that we're making the distinction between biological fear and psychological fear, right? Where biological fear is what we're born with, and it's always a response to, I know I said discomfort, but biological fear is a response to a clear and present danger, right? So if there is a wild animal chasing you, somebody pointing a weapon at you, a car coming in your direction out of control, those are things that if you don't take action, you are going to, they are going to cause you harm. And a lot of this mental performance or lack thereof stems from the misconception of our acute stress responses, the fight or flight response, right? Which are triggered by that sense of danger, of being in danger. And they're really interesting because your acute stress responses can both be triggered by biological and psychological fear, which I'll get into in a second. But the misconception is that fighting means you're brave, fleeing means you're weak, and freezing means you are undiscerning, right? Like you can't make a decision. When really all three of those are actions that your body and brain subconsciously choose to take in order to save you from something that's going to cause you harm. So it starts getting muddled. The whole mental block thing. Mental block on the surface is a term that sounds like it means my body wants to do something, but my brain won't let me. I've had athletes say the exact opposite. My brain wants to do something, but my body won't let me. it on the surface seems like it makes sense to signify it or qualify it as a mental block. But really what's happening is we're misdiagnosing the issue, and we're only trying to treat the surface problem, right? The physical skill. I can't do a physical skill. Oh, it must be a mental block. When in reality, a mental block, as you've seen in my videos, is a person's inability to recall mental information or perform a mental action. So it has nothing to do with our physical learned behaviors, because our physical learned behaviors are stored in our implicit long-term memory, which is a part of the brain where you cannot forget how to do something that you learn how to do. And this includes walking, talking, right? Talking is a physical learned behavior. Um, Swimming, cartwheeling, back handspringing, all of those things. Once they are locked in there, they are there for life. You may not be able to physically do them, but you can remember how to do them. And the crazy thing with physical learned behaviors and the implicit long-term memory, it's a one-way street, right? So it's like opening an app on your phone and tapping it too many times. If you're trying to activate it and you're getting in the way of letting it run, we can do that with our brains as well. We can get in the way of the conversation that the body and the brain are supposed to be having, right? So we're supposed to, think, oh, I want to do a back handspring. And then your brain's like, cool, I got that file.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up. And then, hey, body, we're doing a back handspring. Cool. Body's like, cool. We've gone through this many times. And then you start talking, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't remember? What if this? And they're just like, oh, whoa, whoa. Or you're even like, okay, so for a back handspring, I have to do this, this, and this. And the brain's like, but we already know how. Why are you thinking about it? Right. So it became very important for me to start addressing a lot of these misconceptions, a lot of the confusions that happen. And like I was saying, we have psychological fear that is always a response to discomfort. And it's the fear that we deal with 99% of the time. Motivation culture tells you that fear is bad, that you have to conquer your fear, you have to outperform, or sorry, you have to overcome your fear, you have to, defeat your fear. And it makes sense because motivation culture is about motivation. Motivation speaks to your emotions, right? Motivation is meant to get you to feel good and feel something, whereas inspiration gets you to take action, right? But it's not called inspiration culture. It's motivation culture, because motivation is a lot easier. You just say a bunch of hot buzzwords and people, oh yeah, I feel great, right? And then, but the problem with that is like it's a dopamine hit. It wears off. So after a while, you need another hit, you need another fix to keep going and stay motivated. The last thing I wanted to say about mental blocks and this whole misconception is I think the main reason that people are confused, and this is something that it took me a while to connect these dots, but remember I said acute stress responses can be activated by actual danger and the thought or threat of danger. So what happens is, cortisol is it's a communal hormone. It's a hormone that is designed to make us more alert, get us ready to take action, and also heighten our senses in certain areas, but also warn others in our community when there might be danger or trouble, right? Simon Sinek drew this illustration where he said, you think of a herd of deer, right? When they're grazing, and then one of those deer thinks it heard something and shoots its head up and starts looking around. Pretty soon, Steve, two or three heads down, is going to look up as well. It's like, yo, Bob, did you hear something? What's going on? We do the same thing with our partners in bed, right? Like at night, you think you heard something. Hey, wake up.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing with cortisol, it's meant to just be a shot and be in your system, be out of your system. But modern humans have found ways to keep cortisol in our system with stresses of life. And so when the brain, our neuroreceptors understand or detect that cortisol is in your system for too long, it does what it's supposed to do. It defaults to, he or she must be in danger. And so in that moment, it starts to activate your acute stress responses. So I think that the misconception is mental distress activating physical distress. And so a lot of these athletes don't understand that they are triggering anxiety, triggering these acute stress responses to perceptions of danger or perceptions of, being not being in control of a situation, when really it's just discomfort that they're reacting to. So that was a really long-winded way of
Yeah.
answering your question, but I told you I'm a nerd for this stuff. So
No, and then that was I that was a great explanation. Um, I hear discomfort like you have to uh get comfortable getting uncomfortable to
come on,
keep
I love
making
that.
progress. Like I hear that all the time in business world, and that falls into, I do a lot of work with balance training, and
Love it.
you have to challenge that balance. You have to like allow yourself to go outside the balance, allow yourself to wobble some so that
Mhm.
your body recognizes where center is and to find its way back in. And I think that they flow hand in hand. You have to find that discomfort to do that. I think that where I would get stuck is, the fear of, okay, so I broke my collarbone as a kid, tumbling,
Same. Oh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't. I was showing off for a girl, but yeah, it's about the same thing.
yeah. But so 3 times in, out, out in the playground, in a gym class, and then in my front yard trying to do a thing. And that last time I was like, I don't tumble, I don't do anything anymore. And so it was
Yeah.
always something, in college, I never had to do it, and I never had to like pursue it in high school, but in college, trying to go backwards, and it just would always stop me. But now I'm thinking it was a fear of, because I was told by the doctor, if you ever do this again, you can never wear a strapless
Yes.
dress, and
And they are
um,
the worst advocates when it
right.
comes to fear,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
fear mongering.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But so how do you move past that very natural fear in the discomfort to then get to the other side to push past it? That's
I think you already hit the nail on the head. It's learning to be comfortable in your discomforts, right? And the first thing is to identify your discomforts. What is it that makes me uncomfortable? What is, and this is huge with the physical aspect of tumbling and cheer as well, right? When athletes are having time or hard time executing a physical skill, it's like, okay, well, what part of that makes you the most uncomfortable? Because that is usually an indication of something you either don't understand or you haven't trained enough, right? And so looking for our discomforts, because our brains are very much aware of what we're doing and don't like it. So your discomforts are always apparent. When you're a young athlete, you just don't pay attention to them, right? When we're younger, a lot less gray matter that's developed. We're still developing, we're still learning from context, from experience. So there's a lot less data to draw upon when you're younger, right? Everything is just like, I can do that, right? And then as you get older, that experience and all of the other experiences of growing up start to inform your decisions and make it harder for you to take chances and make it harder for you to outperform the lies of the fear that your brain is trying to tell you, not because the brain doesn't want you to actually succeed, but instead it's again seeking comfort. So it's just trying to deter you from your intended course of action. So it's going to say, hey, remember you broke your collarbone. That's probably going to happen again. You probably just just go back on the couch, watch some Netflix, just be comfortable. But discomfort, if you think about it, discomfort is why diets fail. It's why a lot of relationships fail, New Year's resolutions fail, or any resolution. I heard people throughout the year, it's only like 21% of people actually follow through with any commitment that they've made throughout the year. It's not just New Year's, and that number might be a lot lower, but that's what I think the number is. But yeah, it's all discomfort.
yeah.
So it really boils down to identifying that discomfort and then finding safe, repeatable ways to condition it repeatedly, not just condition the discomfort, but more importantly, condition your response to the discomfort. Like I said, your fear is rarely what you're actually afraid of. What you say you're afraid of is rarely what you are actually afraid of. It's usually an associated discomfort that you're actually trying to say, this is what makes me uncomfortable. For me, I can very easily say, like, and people laugh when I say this, I'm like, yeah, I'm afraid of whales. It's not true at all. I'm not afraid of whales. I think they're majestic, beautiful creatures. However, if I was in the ocean next to one, I would freak out. And so it's not that I'm afraid of whales. I am uncomfortable with the idea of being next to something that large in an expansive body of water that I have very little control over the situation. Right. So the phobias that we have, we blame the small thing for the big thing. Now, in terms of outperforming, identifying your discomfort and repeating. Repetition, by the way, is going to help condition your confidence, because confidence is a direct, your manufactured confidence is a direct product of repetition, right? Human beings are not naturally confident.
Yeah.
Natural confidence refers to our natural surroundings, whereas manufactured confidence refers to our confidence in ourselves and our abilities through repetition. But yeah, so identifying, repeating, finding repeatable ways to drill that discomfort as ad nauseum. And then the biggest thing for me is accepting the idea that fear and discomfort are growth tools. They are not designed to hold you back. And I hate when I hear people, going back to Will Smith, he is a huge proponent of this idea. He says, I hate the idea of being afraid. And so he's a huge advocate of fear's not real. Like, come on, you could
Right.
get rid of your fear. And it's like, no, it's a part of who we are. And like you said, with your balance training, fear lets you know where the edges of your comfort are. When you start feeling fearful, check your discomfort,
Yeah.
right? Check how comfortable you are in that situation, right? And then say, okay, so cool. I'm giving my valedictorian speech next week, and I have all this fear because I'm uncomfortable speaking in front of my peers. Okay, so let's do this for the next week. Get a group of random people from school. See if you can, at lunchtime, go up to random groups and say, hey, can I deliver part of my speech? I'm just trying to practice, right? Start conditioning not only that discomfort, but your reaction to that discomfort. But yeah, those are like some really like, quick and dirty ways that I try to approach helping athletes and high performing people to outperform their fears and their performance anxieties or their repeat sports performance problems.
So would on a on physical end, would that mean like breaking the skill down and just to keep continuing to do the drills until that, or or is it more so someone has lost their ability to handspring or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Like
They've lost their
repeatedly
confidence to do the
lost it.
handspring.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
okay, yeah. Is it taking a step back and doing drills to get you better at doing, that's going to put the pieces together? Or is it repeatedly doing the handspring over and just making you
No, right? Because that's the definition of insanity, is
right, right,
repeating the same thing over and over and hoping that something's going to change. So no, you're exactly right. Taking it back. And then I like to try to help parents and coaches and athletes change this perception as well. A step backward is not the same as a backward step, right? And if you look at those two phrases, a step backward is a conscientious decision to move back in order to review how you should move forward. Whereas what we would call a backward step is a lack of progress or a reverse in your progress. And so, with cheer especially, I'm sure that there are other sports that do this too, but cheer especially, it's always about what's next. Oh, you got your cartwheel, cool, let's do round off. You got your round off, let's do what's next. You got your back handspring, back tuck, like. And parents, I'm sorry, you guys are notorious for being probably the biggest problem in this arena,
yeah,
is that you guys are pushing, you're trying to play coach and you're pushing a little too fast, too soon. But there's no shame for any athlete. Coaches need to know this too. There's no shame for them to take a step back and review their technique and then deconstruct it to the smallest micro skill. I think a big mistake we make is that we focus a lot on the macro and we focus on the physical too much. But, if your athlete, number one, if your athlete is struggling to perform a skill, and I put this in a post a couple of weeks ago, I have never met an athlete struggling to do a physical skill who wasn't always also dealing with mental or emotional trauma. And the crazy part is the physical is the superficial. It's what we can see everybody doing, but the mental and the emotional, nobody, those are subconscious things.
yeah,
So number one, you can't treat them consciously. And number two, many people lack the vulnerability to be honest and say, hey, I'm struggling, right? It's again, blame the small thing for the big thing.
yeah,
I can't do my back handspring. under the surface, the bigger part of the iceberg, I'm still dealing with the emotional trauma of being embarrassed in front of my teammates 2 months ago, or I'm still dealing with the physical trauma of breaking my ankle last year. It's always something more, you know? So the first thing, to answer your question, yes, review your technique, deconstruct your skill to the smallest bits, and make sure you understand every part of that skill, no matter what it is: backhand, spring tuck, layout, full, cartwheel, handstand. But make sure you understand the micro skills that make up the macro skill, because guess what? When you do run into physical trouble again, you'll be able to say exactly where you hit a speed bump, instead of just saying, "Oh, that one was bad," or "that one was good," right? But it could be favorable and less than favorable, but let's not call it bad or good, because let's be specific about what was bad, what was good.
I love all of that explanation.
Thank you.
And I'm only starting now. I mean, I've been a physical therapist for uh, almost 40 years.
Sometime.
Sometime, yeah. Um, and like probably in the last 10 years, and just starting more to recognize how much the mental plays into the physical
Mm.
dysfunction, and how cortisol plays into that. And,
Mhm.
everybody's wound up, and like, and until we can break that cycle on a physical end from, you know, I do a lot of breathing and all that stuff, like, and get things to calm down. The rest of it doesn't fall
Mhm.
in place. But now I'm thinking I need, I need to have someone for the mental performance and be like, okay, they go together. You have to go together, and
They do.
yeah.
I'm reading a book by Dr. David Gran and doctors David Gran and Alan Goldberg. Both of them sports psychologists, but they developed a system. These guys, honestly, it's like it's called "This Is Your Brain on Sports." I don't know if it'll focus, but anyways, um, I rarely read, except for when I have to. When I want to, I'll read.
Right.
But I rarely read other mental performance coaches' work or sports psychologists, because I don't want to be distracted from developing my own understanding of things. But also, a lot of them are just saying the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this isn't how you revolutionize an industry. You don't just keep repeating what's already been said. So these guys, so far, I told my wife today, I was like, it's taking me forever to read this book because every paragraph is like on point, you
Yeah.
know? But one of the things that I read today, Dr. Grand said, repeat sports performance problems, or mental performance issues, don't come out of the blue. I'm just going to read his words. They are the byproducts of the gradual accumulation within the athlete's brain and body of physical and emotional injuries over the course of the athlete's life and career. And so I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make. A lot of parents and coaches will look at and he's referencing an MLB professional baseball player who had a mental performance issue with throwing the ball. Right, as a catcher, he could never throw the ball back to the pitcher mound without pumping a couple times. And so what happens, whether it's a baseball player or a tumbler, we're like, look at this physical specimen. You were just doing back handsprings yesterday. What's wrong with you? We look at the physical performance and we blame that.
Mhm.
Again, small thing for the big thing. It's easier for us to do that. It's easier for us to think about that. And I even told a couple of moms that didn't like hearing this, but it was the truth. It's like, when I'm telling you these things that I've learned and you reject them as a possibility, now it's your discomfort getting in the way of your daughter's development, because now you are evincing a discomfort with accepting a new idea, or accepting that, one mom had a real hard time, even though she said it in her comments. She said that her daughter had anxiety, but she didn't want to admit that it was a performance anxiety. She said, no, it's a mental block because she can't do it. But it's always more than the physical. It's always more than the physical. It's so much deeper, right? You get the idea.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger on the underneath the surface, and finding the root trauma, finding the root of the problem, needs to be higher up on every coach's agenda, every parent's agenda, asking tough questions, being a part of the ministry of presence, getting uncomfortable and forcing your athletes to be uncomfortable in so much as getting them out of their comfort zone, right? Not doing things that make them feel unsafe.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I think this mission is it's long overdue. And I think you're really helping to bring awareness to it also. And so,
Thank you.
everybody's starting to listen. As you and I talked about earlier, I listened to your webinar that you recently did, and think it's fantastic. And 100%, if you're a coach listening, go check it out, because Coach Lain provides a ton of information on the physical end. And I'm not going to remember the numbers, but I know you were talking about how much impact happens during the tumbling sequence, and like it's more than 10% of our body weight.
Oh,
And
yeah, no, it's like 10 times our body weight.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like if running is 3 to 4 times our body weight. So every time your foot makes contact with the pavement or a treadmill and you sink into that step, that's 3 to 4 times your body weight. So tumblers experience 10 times their body weight every impact during a pass or a punch, right? It's excruciating, but it's subconscious. We don't feel it. Our
Right.
bodies are amazing that they can adapt to that. But I remember hearing that fighter jet pilots black out at like 6 to 7 Gs, when they go
Yeah.
from horizontal to vertical.
Yeah.
And so it's just amazing that we're doing numbers that are equated to like being launched into space in an instant. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, to tie that back into the mental performance, if we're not addressing the little things that bring us to that, how are we going to build? Like, you need that foundation, and you need
Yeah,
to have that
so true.
baseline to build that foundation up and build from there. So, and that was just a piece of what you talked about in the webinar, and trying to. So, I agree 100%. Like D1, D2 coaches or D1 programs should have access to a mental performance coach, and I think at a minimum having the awareness that, hey, let's
Yeah,
figure out where do we go from here. So that's my plug for you to go for people to go check that
I
out.
appreciate that. Yeah. If anybody's interested, you can message me directly and I can send you a link to where you can watch it. Otherwise, it is hosted on my private community, my online community for coaches, parents, and athletes. If you go to coachla.in/CLMOC, Coach Lain Method Online Community. You can sign up there, be a part of it, and then have access to any of the videos that I post, live streams that I do. But yeah, the whole intent was to point out 5 top reasons why programs need, especially high performing programs, need a mental performance coach for their athletes. And ironically, the same week that I hosted that webinar, I did 3 days back to back with a all-star athlete from Top Gun in Miami, or Top Gun Orlando. And so it was funny. Like I had just done that on Wednesday evening, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning. And by Friday morning, her mom was like, "Do you travel?" I was like, "I do, but I also just had this thing where if you want to drop my name, that would be helpful."
Yeah.
But yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about your community that you have,
Yeah.
and what you're doing for coaches, with to talk about
With
all that.
communities. Yeah.
Communities. Yeah.
Right. So, as I mentioned, I have the Coach Lain Method online community. That is my personal membership based online community for coaches, parents, and athletes to come and get all of the information I don't end up sharing on social media. It's that and my other community, Coaches Camp, which I run with Kelvin Lamb and Cameron Hockaday. um, they have the same intent, and that is to provide the most value that we can to the people who want the value, right? People who want the information. And the truth of the matter is, when you're sharing to social media, unless you're very intentional about what you're sharing and how you're sharing, it's not always intended to be for everybody. But more importantly, it's not shown to everybody. The algorithm is dictating what gets shown to who or whom. And so we really realize it's like, hey, let's take that equation out of the mix. No algorithm. If you're a part of this community, you get to see every single thing that gets posted, So both communities have different membership tiers that allow you different levels of access. With Coaches Camp, you get the benefit of collective wisdom between the three of us coaches. You get to ask questions. We have, I think, 50 members right now, and we just started in March. So huge, huge
Yeah,
get.
yeah,
And we're so excited because everybody is asking questions, interacting. A lot of new coaches are coming in saying, hey, what the heck is this game day thing? How do we navigate score sheets? How do we, do team building and bonding? And so it really allows us to tap into our collective wisdom. And when we do our live streams together, we get to, just take turns adding our 2 cents. And it's the same for my online community as well, where I'll do live streams or we'll have questions that get asked. We have different categories for different types of information, whether it's mental performance or stunt or game day, whatever it may be. But yeah, they're great places to get that personal touch. It's like, think of a Facebook group but with many more perks. It's not just being a part of this private group chat.
right,
It's you get to be a part of a community that is constantly growing, always evolving, and the information that's being shared, the sky's the limit. I just did a series called Ask a Doc, which you will be appearing on in the future, by the way.
that would be amazing.
But it's I had two physical therapists that I've met through Instagram, and then one pelvic floor specialist. And so we got to talk women's health for young women, young athletes. We got to talk strengthening and strength training and rehab for injured athletes. We got to talk hypermobility because one of the specialists is a hypermobility specialist. So it's just a great time. But that's something that isn't meant for everybody. That's something where if you want to watch it, you come to
Right.
the community and you watch it. So yeah, so the communities have been really good, and I'm really excited to see how they grow. This has only been 3 months. No, 4 months. I'm really excited to see how they grow, moving on further into the year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it grows too, because I think there's people are looking for it,
Hmm.
don't maybe necessarily know that they're looking for it yet.
Exactly.
But I do, I think people are looking for it, and you guys have a wealth of information. And I really love how how we talked about this before too, but how you communicate, and
Thank you.
it's thought out, it's thoughtful, and I tend to do this and ramble and like pause a lot and like try to get to the point. But like I think you get to the point in a kind way that
Hmm.
is that builds people up, while still getting to the point like, hey, get over your fear. Don't, like address
Right,
your
right,
fear. Like be
right.
aware of your fear and be able to get uncomfortable. But you yeah. So
It's just been a blessing because it's like, I'll post, and this is again not for everyone. This is more for like my audience, the people that are actually following me. But I'll post stuff like even just saying it's okay to be scared, which is not profound,
right,
but it just doesn't get said that often in a
right,
public forum, or you know, don't fight your fear, accept it, or one of the big ones that people were really confused by was where I would say, give me 10%, 20%, 50% less. You're trying too hard. Give me less.
yeah,
And speed comes with control. You can speed it up after you can control the skill. So just it's been awesome having people positively respond to what's been jokingly referred to as the gentle mental approach, but now I embrace it. So
yeah,
I'm the gentle mental coach. And it's really good because I no longer feel like I'm faking the funk. Before, when I was a much younger coach and I thought I had to be like other coaches or had to be a certain way, or even when I started Coach Lain, I thought I had to be the hype man. I thought I had to be loud and in your face with things. And I finally stepped into my own really understanding and embracing who I am as a teacher and instructor, technician, but then also as a counselor. And I mean, basically, it's a little bit of therapy. So it's nice to be able to have the freedom and the favor to be able to just do your own thing. you know, and make your own niche, carve out your own niche for yourself.
Yeah. So you said you do some you do in person, you do virtual. Tell us a little bit about how you work with people and what does that look like?
So yeah, so currently I'm recovering from knee surgery. You would appreciate
Yeah.
this. I ruptured my patellar tendon, so I'm learning how to walk again right now. So no physical spotting, but before pre-injury, I would do physical in-person lessons. I've just put a slight pause on that. Should be returning to that. My PT is estimating like mid-June, July. So just be on the lookout for my schedule. But I have people that travel to me from all over the world. I had a father's son come from Sweden. I have people come from the East Coast, West Coast, Southwest, you know, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico over the summer.
Yep.
So it's really cool because I have a home base at an all-star gym here. Great group of people. They let me use the facility. So we're able to schedule those out. But a bulk of what I've been doing a lot, especially since some of my clips are getting some viral attention, I've been booking a lot of mental performance sessions. So mental performance sessions, it's funny, you know, of course the popularity grew during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And people did not understand what they were or what value they would add. But like I said before, they basically become a therapy session. And so some I will have parents only focused on the physical. And so it takes some discernment to, you know, and some tact to help them understand, like, hey, this is about more than the physical, but go ahead, send me those videos. Let's review those together. Let's take a look and point out some technique issues that I might see, but let's also talk about the mental and the emotional and just see what comes up organically. But most of them are in such an emotionally and mentally distraught place that we just sit down and talk for an hour. Sometimes they'll go over if I have the time in my schedule to allow it to run over a little bit. I don't like to cut off anyone if they're in the moment. But we talk everything from uh you know, we talk about their history, their past influences, currently influences before, you know, we cover everything, and it's a real organic process where we're just talking like this. And I think that's what parents appreciate the most is just, again, ministry of present, just being present.
Yeah.
Hearing the athlete out. Parents learn a lot about their student athlete even if they're super close. I've had so many wonderful, beautiful mother daughter and father daughter or son relationships that I get to witness through the screen. And even they are like, huh, I never heard you say that before. Or I never realized you thought that way. And that goes both ways between
Yeah.
adult and athlete.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those mental performance lessons are a great time, an hour for us to sit down and just discuss everything that could be on the table. Put everything on the table. Nothing is too ridiculous sounding. Nothing is too goofy. Nothing is too embarrassing. You know, we put everything out there on the table. So those both can be the traveling in-person lessons. I don't call them private lessons. I call them personal performance training and mental performance training. And those both can be booked through my website, which is trainwithcoachlain.com, LAIN.com.
Perfect. And then I don't know if we've already talked about your Instagram. Is that the best way if people just want to connect, like follow you on
Yes.
Instagram to
Instagram
learn more?
is the best way to
Okay.
connect with me.
Yeah.
I'm at Coach Lain everywhere, conveniently.
That's good. Made that.
Yeah. So Instagram is the best way
Yeah.
to connect with me. I do DMs all day, every day, pretty much. It's the only app that remains the most used app on my phone. I spend the most
Yeah.
time, but I check periodically. I turn off my notifications because I don't want to go crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, I'm at Coach Lain all across social media. So TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest. Did you know Pinterest has a large like
I'm starting to learn that. I
Yay.
can't handle getting there yet.
It's
Yeah.
and it's a lot of like teeny boppers, a lot of the young
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
I had no idea. But anyway, so Pinterest everywhere. And then if you ever wanted to reach out via email, it's info at coachlain.com.
Awesome. And we'll have all of that in the show notes. So don't need to worry about it.
Thank you.
Write it down while you're driving.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
This is amazing. I'm excited to see what the future holds for you. And
I appreciate that.
and hopefully we can talk again in the future at some point and see how, where things are at going forward too. So
Yeah, no, I
maybe
definitely think
maybe I'll
it's,
get the guts up to have all three of your coach camp people, everybody.
if you can pin us all down at the
I
same
know.
time, that would
Yeah,
be
I know.
amazing. I know we struggle to pin each other down,
Yeah.
but I love it though, because I look at, like begets like, and the
Mhm.
reason I was attracted to Kelvin and Cameron in the first place was because I did notice a similar passion and a similarity in our instruction methods,
Yeah.
and then when we started talking, I said, you know what, guys, like we should take this a step further. Like we should really make this something that we can offer to our individual audiences, but then in a collective way. And so I'm thrilled that we're all super busy because they do amazing work. We all do amazing work, and so it's nice to know that we're busy doing what we're good at.
Yeah.
And so we don't, look at it like, oh, too busy to do a live stream. It's like, yeah, maybe we are. It's
Yeah.
summer too, so
Yeah.
it's the one last thing I was going to say, and I have to give this a shout out. In a week and a half, I will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma at my buddy Coach Levi's gym for the first session, the kickoff session of his first ever Camp Tumble Smart. And so it's going to be a great time. We have athletes coming in from all over the country. It's a time that he's very intentional about including parents as well, instead of how most all-star gyms sequester parents into a room or a viewing area. And so there will be time for parents to ask questions, learn things. The kids are going to get, I think it's like up to 20 hours of tumbling
Oh, wow.
during their entire time there. So we're very excited. And even with my hop along self, I'm going to attempt to get on several airplanes to make it there. And I hope to see some of you guys, if you're in the surrounding states, make your way there. So you can go to camptumblesmart.com to learn about that.
Awesome. I'll put that out there too. That's very
Thank you.
cool. And I'll start to share that too on social. So, and
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm very much looking forward to it. It's gonna be a fun time.
Be sure to take your time as you're getting back in after your knee. That's my
Yes, I will. Trust me. That's one thing. My dad tore his quad tendon and his ACL about 15 years ago, and I got to witness what happens when you try to do too much too soon. So I'm trying my own gentle mental approach on myself. I'm taking time to process my own physical trauma, which,
Yeah.
by the way, physical trauma parents never leave. Surgery itself is a lifelong trauma that your athlete will live with, or you will live with. And so it's very important for us to not, as Laura said, not rush back into physical activity without processing that first.
Yeah.
Because those are the number one culprits for, like Laura, you were telling me about your collarbone. The
Yeah.
fear of re-injury comes from that trauma.
Yeah.
And it's very, very strong, very pervasive. So
Yeah.
no, I'm trying to listen to my own advice and coach myself. So
Good.
I will take my time, and I can only go one speed, honestly. So if
Sometimes
I
that's a
gotta,
good thing. That's
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been nice to slow down for a little bit. It's been really nice. So, but thank you so much for this opportunity, and for being inviting me to be on the show. This has been a wonderful time.
Same here. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
All
you.
right, everyone. That's today's episode of the Cheer Athlete. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to, and as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.
Go get it.